From the studios of WPGX, Fox 28, it's News View with Don Arias.
Welcome to News View. I'm Don Arias, and tonight I'm honored to have a very special guest. We have Major General Sid Clarke from Tyndall Air Force Base. He's the commander of 1st Air Force and the Continental United States NORAD region, or Air Forces Northern. General Clarke, thank you so much for agreeing to come on News View.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
You know, it's the holiday season coming up, and people are scrambling, but you guys are working 24/7, round the clock, 365 days a year. Isn't that right?
That's right. And it makes no difference what day it is or holiday. It's job one for us is Homeland Air Defense, and we don't stop.
It's got to be a little tough on the family now. You're a lieutenant general. I said major general. I apologize for that. You know, a 3-star general, very important guy. You're on 24/7. I get that, but you have a family, and you have a life. How do you balance all that? How do you get that work-life balance down?
I think you have to remind yourself every now and then that your family is important, and make sure that you accommodate for that. But I think your family also understands what you do. So expressing what you do and the importance of it to them is very important, and that's true for all the military people that work for me.
Yes, and you know, just being a retired officer myself, I know how that can be. You know, of course, now that I'm retired, I think I have an opportunity to spend a little more time with the family. And you're right, military families are something special. They're not your typical, you know, spouses or kids. They know what you're in and what you're up to, what you're doing, and and they know the demands of your job and how important it is.
Well, fortunately, my wife is the daughter of a retired Army colonel, 33 years in the military. So she was kind of used to Dad being out of the house a lot, and so she's good with it. The children were raised, you know, in that same venue. So I think my family, I know, anticipates that I'll be gone quite a bit, but and busy, even during the days that I am here at Tyndall. But I would, by and large, I appreciate your comment, because I know it is different.
Yeah, and military families and military people are just really a special breed, because they go above and beyond. But what I'd like to talk about on the other side of this break that we have to go to is some of your responsibilities that you have out there at Tyndall. Because I think a lot of people really don't realize that the air defense, air sovereignty operations that protect us from air attack or any intrusion on our air sovereignty is all coordinated right here through little old Tyndall Air Force Base.
That's correct.
A lot of us don't get that.
That's correct.
Let's talk about that on the other side. You're watching News View. I'm Don Arias. I'm talking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke.
We now return to News View. Here again, Don Arias.
Welcome back to News View. I'm talking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke. Sir, we talked a little bit about how all of these operations, the air defenses of the United States, are coordinated right through Tyndall Air Force Base. Can you tell us how all you do that and what assets you have at your disposal to protect us?
Sure. At Tyndall, for 1st Air Force, we're divided into really 2 parts. One is the 1st Air Force staff, which works a lot of staff actions as a part of the United States Air Force. And that staff also responds a lot to defense support of civil authorities if we have a contingency crisis, like Hurricane Sandy recently, and we were very active and involved in that. We also do theater security cooperation efforts with neighboring countries like Mexico and the Bahamas and Canada for the security overall of the United States. But the air defense mission is the big one, and that's the one that's operated, like you said, out of Tyndall. Truly what we own out there is the command and control for all the forces that would support us in the event of a air emergency or air defense effort. And all the forces around the nation that we control for this air defense, we do the planning, the organization, the tasking, follow-up actions, immediate response things are all done right here from Tyndall, and then we work through our air defense sectors that actually control the aircrafts themselves when we launch them until they recover back at their home bases.
When you say air defense sectors, does it mean that you have the United States divided up into a pie and
we do.
People have different areas of responsibility?
We do, and there's 2 sectors now, the Eastern Air Defense Sector and Western Air Defense Sector, and they are headquarters. One is up in Rome, New York, and the other one's up at Lewis McChord Air Force Base up in Washington State. And then we also have a joint unit at the National Capital Region protecting Washington, D.C. And that one is a big effort, protecting the capital region with all the air traffic flows in and out of there.
Bet.
The importance of the National Capital Region, particularly with the president being there, that one requires a lot of attention and effort. But all of that is command and controlled from Tyndall Air Force Base.
I remember years ago, I think it was 1996, the QDR Quadrennial Defense Review had some language in it that said they needed to eliminate intermediate levels of command, and that the Soviet Union was long gone now, and we had no peer competitor anymore, and who needs air defense? Mm-hmm. And wasn't 1st Air Force and just air defense of the continental United States in danger of just going away at one point?
It was, people were quick to take down things that they didn't feel like were necessary. And of course 9/11 occurred, and not only did we continue to have an external look, which is basically what we had taken ourselves down with very few sites around the nation, but we also recognized that we needed an internal look over the nations. We need to be able to control the airspace over the United States at all times. Now, the Federal Aviation Administration controls the airspace, if you will, but from a perspective, from an air defense perspective, the ability to own that airspace anytime you want to for the purpose of defending assets that we think are important in the United States, we had to have that control as well. And that's where we reversed those decisions after 9/11 and brought all of the command and control, common operational picture, working closely with the interagencies like the FAA, and air defense assets on alert all the time around the nation in more places, because from a geography perspective, we can't get there. Even with a supersonic fighter, it still takes some time to move from one location to another to cover that airspace. So we reorganized all that after 9/11. We have a very good structure in place now, and I would tell you that our command and control of what we do is probably the hallmark of military operations. Very, very good, well designed.
So 9/11 probably couldn't happen again today, the way we're postured.
That's true. And another part of that is deterrence. When you start taking things down, people pay attention to that.
Sure.
So if that quadrennial defense review decided to take assets down at the level they were planning to, somebody probably didn't think about the deterrence effort, and that is that we put up a big front here to prevent things from happening, either from a domestic air attack by hijacked aircraft or somebody from outside, either with aircraft, cruise missiles, potentially other type of missiles.
I know just from my experience working in talk radio and other things, there is a whole cottage industry of conspiracy theorists out there. And I know just from my military experience during 9/11, people were asking, well, why did NORAD stand down on 9/11? I mean, crazy stuff. And people see the movies and they expect, we have some sort of force field over the United States. It's an impenetrable cosmic thing that protects us, and it would take an effort not to do it. We don't have a force field, do we?
No, we don't.
And on 9/11, we had, 7 alert sites with 14 airplanes and 14 men protecting over 300 million Americans from air attack. Mm-hmm. And that's the posture we were in at that time. So you conspiracy theorists, if you're watching, you're wrong. And I find it, just being a member of a 9/11 family, really offensive. And I do quite a bit of public speaking. And invariably, I'll have someone come up to me afterwards and ask me these things. Mm-hmm. Is there anything anybody could say to dissuade people from thinking that way?
If you talk to anybody that was actually in the business, they would tell you that that's not true. That
sure.
we were doing basically what we were told to do, and that had to deal with an external look, looking for aircraft coming from outside. Back then, we were probably more concerned about Russian attacks and Cuban attacks, sure. possibly, but really, no one was looking internally to say what would happen if we needed to face an asymmetric threat, that is, somebody that would hijack an airplane and use it in a suicide manner and attack us. We weren't even structured to even talk to the FAA correctly. And if you read the 9/11
sure.
Commission report, the lack of connectivity between the different people, including the military and the interagency, was appalling. I mean, but it was a lack of imagination as much as anything. We just didn't think through this very well. I think we think through it real well now. In fact, we spend as much time on the intelligence and imagination side as any entity, I'd say, out there, either in government or civilian.
So now we have the connectivity, we have the Imagineers in place, and people who are thinking outside the box to ensure that something like this can't happen again. And you know, another thing, General, is that people say we always fight the last war. Are we anticipating the next war? Do we know what that could possibly be?
No, and you know, during my time, Don, I actually worked in the Pentagon on a lot of planning, and one of the things I came away from is we know, at least I believe, that we plan for things we don't do, and we do things we don't plan for.
All right.
And I think a lot of it goes to our agility and as Americans on how we adapt to things and make things happen, and that's true in the military. So I would tell you that we don't know what the next war will look like. I would tell you that the Pentagon strategy is to focus on more of like the Asia-Pacific region, less on the ground wars in Asia. Although who's to say that one couldn't happen again? I go back to we do things we didn't plan for, and we plan for things we don't do. It's just the nature of the business we're in.
So we pretty much have to be prepared for everything.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think we teach that to our people, and that we have doctrine that keeps us very close to our tenet beliefs. But on the other hand, one of those, certainly for air power, from my perspective, is flexibility is key. So we have to adapt and be ready for just about anything.
And we're ready for a break.
Okay.
I'm speaking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke from 1st Air Force in the continental United States NORAD region at Tyndall Air Force Base. You're watching NewsView.
We now return to NewsView. Here again, Don Arias.
Welcome back to NewsView. I'm speaking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke. General, the threat has changed. So we're postured. 9/11 couldn't happen again the way it did last time. But now we're doing so much more. Katrina happened back in 2005. And what does air defense have to do with defense support for civil authorities?
Yeah, under those different hats I wear, as you mentioned, the continental region for NORAD is that air defense piece. Under my 1st Air Force and Air Force's Northern hat, we do have responsibilities of supporting U.S. Northern Command located in Colorado Springs to support Americans at large and some of our allies as well in North America. And the effort there is to, if there is a requirement for air capabilities, then we would command and control that out of here as well. So we spend a lot of time doing exercises and thinking through this for Hurricane Sandy and other efforts. And I can go into Hurricane Sandy, but to let you know, there are different capabilities that from an air perspective that we provide. And one of the first one would be incident awareness. If there is something that occurs of a large magnitude and requested, then we can provide capabilities that we have that would give people on the ground who are making decisions about where they want to first put the first responders, how many first responders, where are the choke points. We can provide that information if requested. Another one would be search and rescue. We have a lot of search and rescue assets that we use overseas for combat operations, but we can use them here at home as well to support people who are victims of a disaster.
There were some seminal moments in the evolution of 1st Air Force and CONR and AFNORTH, and one of them was 9/11, another was Katrina. I know just from my own experience there when I was part of the organization, when Katrina happened, like blood to a wound, everybody in the world wanted to go there. And here you are, you've got Louis Armstrong Airport that's just packed with airplanes, and you've got other airplanes trying to come in. What's the solution to that? Does the military just swoop in every time to come to the rescue?
Well, not exactly. And in fact, depending on the magnitude of the disaster, the first responders, local, state government officials, civilians would come to rescue. If it expands beyond that, then the governor may want to put the National Guard to work. And then if the effort is larger than even what the National Guard in that particular state can do, then they would request the support of the Title X forces, that is the regular Air Force and things that we can bring in. There are scenarios out there, massive earthquakes, tsunamis, Mount Rainier, blows out in Washington State, just a variety of things out there that could happen that would require federal assistance. and particularly if you have unique capabilities. For instance, Hurricane Sandy, one of the requests we got was for water pumps. So much flooding, places, basements of hospitals, et cetera. They said, we really need pumps. We don't have enough pumps. Can you bring those in? We did. We also, from a speed of response effort, and this was another one of those lines of effort that we have for defense support of civil authorities, was to fly in bucket trucks from power companies and crews from even out west to the New England area to help get that power restored in that area. So those type of things, I think a lot of what happened in Sandy went well because of what we didn't do so well during Katrina. And Katrina it wasn't anybody was at fault. It was more that we just didn't think through and plan carefully for what we would have to do. So just like 9/11 did for the air defense enterprise that I helped command, Katrina was a milestone event for us in thinking about how do we best organize, how do we put things in effort, how do we prioritize, how do we schedule correctly. And we did things like that even for the earthquake down in Haiti. And that was to, they had one airport, one runway, and everybody wants to bring everything all at once. Like you said, somebody's got to take over that. And that's what this command and control enterprise that I represent can do, is to sort through all that and help get that prioritization and scheduling function down so that you can bring relief efforts in as well as you can.
And that's probably the most valuable thing that the military brings to the table, is that command and control skill sets. We can restore order to what would otherwise be a chaotic situation.
That's quite true. And I mean, we're not perfect, but by and large, I would tell you that we train for things that are going to be austere, and assume that there is no electricity, assume there is no running water, assume that there's no communications, that there is no fuel. We bring that to the effort if we are requested to.
Yeah, and for instance, in Haiti, I know there were a lot of agencies, there were a lot of DOD assets that were brought to bear there, like Air Force Special Operations Command. First guys in, set something up. Mm-hmm. Then you guys came in and you set up the air bridge to make sure there was an orderly flow of relief supplies going in there. I mean, that's a huge task.
Well, it was, and even with the Deepwater Horizon spill, we were brought in to help schedule the air flights that were going in and out of that airspace, tightly packed airspace with a lot of aircraft going in and out, even for something that was out over the Gulf. So somebody's got to schedule that, command and control that, and we can bring that to the effort.
So it's not just fighters.
Oh, no.
It's not just fighters. You have reached back into the whole Air Force to bring whatever Air Force assets to bear on whatever situation may arise.
That's right. And for Hurricane Sandy, we did exactly that. C-5, C-17s, a lot of aircraft flying in and out. Fortunately, there wasn't a big need for aeromedical evacuation of patients, but we can bring that in. And we can also set up hospitals with Air Force assets. The other services have them too, can bring in support assets as well. But getting in and out in a large way quickly with aircraft, that would fall on our
and you would work hand in hand
to make sure there are no gaps or seams.
We'll talk more about that on the other side of the break. You're watching News View. I'm speaking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke.
We now return to News View. Here again, Don Arias.
Welcome back to News View. I'm speaking with Lieutenant General Sid Clarke. General, we've only got a minute or two left. Holiday season's coming up. A lot of businesses will be closed over the holidays or on shorter hours. Your business will still be open, won't it?
It will be, absolutely.
So you'll have people 24/7 through the holidays, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, sitting in an air operations center. Many people will be on call. I understand that this AOC over here is going to help NORAD track Santa this year. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Every year.
Every year we're tracking Santa out there. Yeah. And how do we find out about that? How do kids, how do parents, how do families kind of find out? I guess there's an application.
There's a website, noradsanta.org.
noradsanta.org, if we can put that up.
Yeah, and when they tag that site, then it will come up, and it's kind of fun because you can see Santa is flying around delivering gifts all over the world. And of course, it starts a lot earlier in other parts of the world. So even during the day, I would say Christmas Eve evening and Christmas morning, certainly there's opportunities to see where Santa's been.
Sir, I appreciate coming on to Newsview and putting up for the last half hour. It's a real honor to have you on Newsview. And I know our viewers are relieved that you and 1st Air Force are on the job protecting us 24/7. You're watching NewsView. This is Don Arias. You can sleep easy because the general doesn't. We'll see you next time.